Mitch has a whole box of crap.
I've been eat up with Ultraman since I was 7 years old, which goes back a way. And when the internet came around and I was able to really do a deep dive, I was a goner. I mean, I love Japanese sci-fi. I love, kaiju and tokusatsu and the whole Sentai. It's fascinating. The more you get into it, the more interesting it gets. And it's fascinating. Yeah. And so much fun.
Yeah, I lived in Japan for 3 years and wasn't into it before I moved there, and then just really got into it, went whole hog, into it. So it's a lot of fun.
You're living the dream.
Well, if I don't have enough material there for the cold open, then I don't know what I'm doing anymore on this show.
What are we here for?
Anyways, we'll just open it up. Let's just get started because I feel like we're going to have a good conversation here. So, welcome to the NerdBrand Podcast, everybody. I'm Jason. That's John. Actually, probably point that way because it reverses. That's Mitch, and that's JS. And we're going to give this man a little time here in a little bit to introduce himself because he's our honored guest on the show. We're happy to have him. And this show, just as a warning for everybody that's listening or watching, is going to be a very nerdy show. And we make no apologies for it. And that's why I give that disclaimer now. Because of our guests mostly. So I want to kind of give you the floor, sir, to introduce yourself. Tell us your name. Tell us what you like, what you're into, what you want to promote. It's yours for the next few minutes.
Well, thanks for having me. I'm excited. I'm excited to be on a podcast where my Southern accent isn't the strongest one on there. So it's good to be with some other folks with that say y'all regularly. My name is Jon-Stephen Stansel. I am a social media manager for the past who knows how long, I've lost track now, but since social media was a thing, I've been working in mostly higher ed and government social media accounts. I ran social for Texas State University, the Texas Department of Transportation. There's nothing you can say to me on social media that will hurt my feelings after that. I've read it all. And the University of Central Arkansas. I took a leap of faith recently and decided to enter the world of going freelance a little bit. And I'm currently working on the social media team for Invincible, which is a new series coming up on Amazon Prime starting March 26th. I'm super excited about it. I love the comic book. It's by the creator of Walking Dead, Robert Kirkman. And it's a breath of fresh air after working in higher ed so long, and especially to be able to one, the comic in the series is absolutely amazing, and to engage in with such an enthusiastic fandom. The fans of the comic book are just die hard. They love it. They love seeing it on social. They're excited about the series coming up, and then to introduce it to a whole new fandom via the series is really exciting. So happy to be here. I'm a nerd on both the marketing and social media side, but also comic books, guitars, Japanese kaiju, all that stuff. So
you're in good company. Well, at least as far as I'm concerned, you're in good company.
I'm glad to be here.
I mean, I saw the trailer for the show, and we can't like play it here for our YouTube audience because YouTube will be like, no, you don't. But we'll put a link in the description below for those that are on YouTube watching this. But I'm really interested in seeing this. I'm excited for it. As I was watching it, I was like, oh, they didn't. Oh, they did. Oh no. I mean, so when that does it, it's awesome.
That's one of the bit, for me, one of the most exciting things is seeing the fans do their reaction videos. Like they'll record themselves watching the trailer for the first time. And, I, being the social media manager, I've seen it many, many times beforehand, and to see their reaction to certain things and know like, okay, this thing's coming up. What's the reaction going to be is the only thing I can compare it to is like being a parent watching your kid open presents on Christmas morning. Like it's just, you know what the surprise is about to be, and seeing that reaction is really exciting.
Yeah, I mean, I've got Amazon Prime, so I've got the date marked, and I'm like, okay, I got something that I'm going to be diving into and chewing on for quite a while, because I like adult themed comics and their animation. The last one that I saw was, I think we all know about the Batman adult theme. I don't know how it's basically, I don't know why the title of it is escaping me right now, because I just hit a speed bump in my brain, but it's where Joker, actually, we get to see the story where he paralyzes Batgirl and
the Killing Joke, right?
Oh, yeah, the Killing Joke.
Yes, I've got the thing hanging on my wall, and I just don't have it. Like to look at it. But yeah, I mean, I thought like, okay, and I've got the comic and I read it, and I was like, well, how's this going to transliterate to animation? How's this going to look? How's this going to work? And it was okay. So I'm kind of curious to see this one as well, because it sometimes goes okay. I mean, Gotham by Gaslight is one of my favorite animated movies with Batman, and I know they deviated from the comic just a hair, but it worked really well. It was like, it's so good. So I'm really excited for this one. To see how this one goes.
It's one of those fun things to be able to work on something that you're actually a real big fan for. So like, the cast for the show is absolutely just amazing. Like,
I know
it's just packed with talent, from like Stephen Yeun to J.K. Simmons. Like, Mark Hamill is in it. Like, it's wild.
He's made a pretty good.
That.
Hamill's pretty much he's become almost as well known for his voice acting now as he has for, well, that may be a bit of a reach, but still, I mean, the stuff he did for matter of fact, I remember he did a TV role on the old launch of the Flash series from the early 90s. I can't remember the name of the character he played.
Oh, I know who you're talking about.
I want to say the Trickster, but I'm not sure if that's correct. Maybe it is.
Yeah.
But he did a wonderful job with that. Then he went on. He did the voice work on the Batman series he did the Joker, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
he was the Joker.
For like 25 years,
yeah.
he's been the voice for that. Like, we all know him as Luke Skywalker, but I mean, I see the Batman series that was in the 90s. So I was I graduated high school in 94. So, I mean, I was along for that ride. I mean, that animated series, 5 seasons, that's kind of unheard of for an animated series. Not too many get to claim that one. They usually get shut down in like season 2 or 3. So, like Batman Beyond was kind of like, what was that? 2.5, 3.5 or something. They did that cool epilogue, in the Justice League. I think it was the 2004 run of that animated series. They did epilogue, which was really cool, where you got to see like the explanation of what happened with where Bruce was was a little older, and then with the lady that ran Suicide Squad, where she was at Amanda Waller, and how she took his DNA and made Terry McGinnis, whatever. Yeah, for those listening, comics are weird.
So JS, for people out there who may not be as familiar with Invincible as, say, me or Jason yourself, kind of give us a thumbnail sketch of what the story's about.
Oh man, where to even begin? Like, it's like, and to do it in a spoiler-free way. Oh, it's at the heart of it. It's a family drama. It's like a superhero family drama. You've got Mark, whose father is Omni-Man, which is the most powerful superhero on the planet. And he, hits puberty and gets the powers, and he's struggling to kind of become a superhero in this really, it goes back and forth between some very wholesome feeling to a very gritty feeling. Like, where one scene, he's playing catch with his dad, and the next scene, like, they don't pull any punches on what the violence is in being a superhero. Like, there are real stakes and there are real consequences. So that's what's I think that's as much as I can say without like giving anything
won't get
away.
We got you.
I don't want to get
gotcha.
into
Yeah, it's there were moments, you know, when I was first reading the comic where you just have to like, oh my God, I got to put it down and process this for a second. And it's really fantastic.
Yeah,
So,
you got a good story when you have to like, if you're reading a comic book and it's the comic book and you're reading it and you're like, okay, I got to put this down for a minute. You got a really good one. I've had a few of those with Grant Morrison's run and when he was writing Batman and doing Batman. And I was just like, okay, I got to lay that down for a minute.
Yeah. What's interesting is I think what Amazon has done in developing it, the TV shows they have that are comics centric now. You've got The Boys, which is live action, which is pretty in the same way as Invincible. To some degree, it's similar to Invincible in that it pulls no punches. It's gritty. It kind of delves into that. If superheroes were real, what could it actually be like? But they look at it almost like from a worst case scenario. It's interesting how Netflix is cultivating their comic genre programs.
Well, hold on.
The direction they're leaning.
Not Netflix.
I'm sorry. God, I'm sorry.
In the middle of this. That's illegal.
I'm sorry. Amazon Prime.
Flag on the play, whatever. Sports ball. I don't know.
I knew better. Amazon
I didn't mean to
Prime.
cut you off.
No, you're fine. You're fine. But it's interesting to see where Amazon Prime has taken the direction they've taken with their comic genre shows. They're taking a more, dare I say, grown up, or leaning more toward the adult audience with a little more grit, more realism. And it just happens, I guess, that Invincible already. I mean, it's not like they're creating them that way. That's the way these properties were originally created. But they're saying, okay, this is a space we want to occupy.
Right. Yeah. And that's exciting because there are those stories that need to be told in that way. And that, growing up reading comic books, there's always kind of that split between, I'm looking at your background, see all the Batman stuff. Like there's the split between like the 1966 Batman series and then like the really Dark Knight, right?
Yeah. Thank you, Frank Miller.
But both of those stories are equally as incredible and fun and entertaining, and comics are just, they can go any way. There's room to tell all those stories.
Yeah, and you can't blame Frank Miller for the dark stuff. I mean, I've got.
Well, that's where it started. That's where it started.
I guess, but I mean, I've got a graphic novel that titled Year 2, and it's got Batman on the front of it with a gun. And I've got it here somewhere. I was with it laying around. It's hard to come by. It's first edition, and so there. And I think this in the 50s, he was like just brutally beating the crap out of people, and so Batman has just gone through this evolution himself. And so it's sort of like I think maybe and for those of us as we get older, that's kind of what we expect. As we get older, we're like, okay, we want the more adult themed stuff. We want to see this character, like if he's closer to our age or to us or to realism, like what would he be like? And you kind of get that. So I don't know. So Invincible is going to be, for me, I'm excited for it. We don't get you in trouble about trying to talk too much about it and you slip up and then, you're like, okay, crap. I said something I shouldn't have said.
That's one of the lines you have to thread, doing the social for it a little bit is, what can you say that's not revealing of what's going to happen, or also dealing with two separate fan bases, the current fan base who've read the comic and they know what beats and they want to see and they're expecting, versus people who are going to be coming into it fresh, and balancing that too, and finding that middle ground is got to find the sweet spot.
Yeah, I can see you probably sitting at the editor, like trying to create a social media post, and it's just the clock just goes by because you're just poring over every single word you're saying to make sure you don't do something or say something that somebody could just grab that little tidbit and just run away with it.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of cranked up to 10 a little bit, but I think you get that with like any brand. Like when in higher ed, there's so much detail of like, okay, if we use this word, are people going to think we're saying this versus, and it's just, I think the microscope is a little bit more powerful because fans will want to grab on to everything rather than opposed to, students at a university.
Right.
Depending on, but it's also depending on the school too, and who those messages are targeting. When I was at Texas State University, the students just loved the school and they wanted all of that, or even like replying to students where we would mail out students that would say, hey, I just applied to the university, and you want to reply to them and encourage them, but you don't want to do it in a way that leads them on to feeling like they've been accepted when maybe they haven't. So you really have to learn to watch your words, but also you don't want to fall into that, like, I am deliberately not saying anything and I feel like I'm
saying something without saying something.
Exactly. So you really have to, you always, it's that measure twice, cut once approach. Like when I'm tweeting, I read, even just like replying to people, like, okay, I'm going to read over this like 3 or 4 times and see how it can be interpreted before I send it out.
Well, I mean, it's especially with, I mean, I'm sure the same way with higher ed, but especially with nerd culture, with the prevalence of all these, the streaming shows have exploded, and the fandoms have exploded, and they're parsing every little piece of information that drips out, trying to determine, okay, what did this that happened in the last episode mean? Where's this going? What are they not telling us? So they're reading things into it, trying to come up with these answers on their own. And you've got to be careful, I guess, with what you're putting out there to not lead people down the wrong.
That makes me think of like when during the main Star Wars, the last trilogy that was released, like, gosh, the stuff that was coming out on YouTube, it was just brutal. The Star Wars Theories, which I think is a channel, and everything that was like, I think this was definitely before what was episode 8 came out or something like that. I believe it's before episode 8, the one with Rian Johnson. And man, the theories that came out, and then that show came out, that wasn't controversial at all. That was not a controversial movie. No way, not in the Star Wars world. We don't get like passionate about that. And then all the theories took a hook turn, and it was like, man, you guys kind of contributed, I think, to the ruining of that, because it was like, it just got like too spoilery, and I know the MCU with Marvel, they've had that too. Like, and I don't think it wasn't anything that people like yourself were putting out there that were causing that, and not at all. They were doing like what you do, like saying, hey, check out the show, whatever, blah, blah, blah. It was the fans, like Mitch said, that just ran away with theory after theory after theory, to the point where I wouldn't even watch trailers anymore, because, for the Marvel Cinematic Universe, I just wouldn't, because I'd watched like one. I'd watched the first one, and then after that, I was done, because the theories and the comments and the things that would happen with all the others after that, it would ruin it for me, because you're sitting there now watching the show, and you're anticipating one of those theories to show up instead of enjoying the show and the story. Now you're just waiting to prove if you're right.
Right. It's interesting. It's an interesting dynamic, I think. And Jace, you can chime in on this I'm interested in what you think, because you've got the hardcore fans, which Invincible has a following of its own. Then you've got the broader audience that you want to take this thing and accept it. And you hope that, let's say when that second episode comes out, you hope that it's received well enough by the diehards that they help carry the message out to the broader world that this is something you really need to see. If they're happy, it'll take a life of its own, like a brush fire. If not, or if there's cracks somewhere, if they deviate somewhere in the story or something from what the diehard fans have come to adopt and to know and love, and it can cause problems.
Yeah, well, and that kind of goes back to like talking to, with one voice, talking to multiple audiences can be be very tricky, right? You want to please the current fans, you want to please the future fans, and sometimes, you know, I really like the fan base that we have right now and the followers, because they are very helpful in ways that I can't be to some of the newer the newer fans. So, you know, we'll get comments like, hey, I want to read the comic before the show starts. There's 144 issues. I won't be able to read them all by them. Where do I need to get to? And I can't answer that. Like, I cannot, right? So, but the fans will come in and go, hey, if you just get through, we're guessing that, you know, you probably need to get through X number of issues. And they're supportive of that. Like they're like, we want you to be a fan too. Like, here, what can we do to help get you on board? And they, in many ways, they do that job for us, and we want to nourish that whenever possible.
Well, I guess that's sort of your job, is kind of, well, indirectly, is to kind of roll that ball a little bit so that it gets a little, you roll the ball out there, and then the fans kind of come in and kind of take over and start giving it more momentum. So those people on the perimeter, the non-hardcore fans saying, oh, what is it over there? And then your fans say, come on along here.
You know, it's almost like, you can compare it, thinking about it now in my experience in higher ed, it's like current students talking to potential students, you know, where, you know, the best piece of advice I got years ago when I was looking for a college, right? When I was going to go to college, somebody told me, he's like, don't believe the ambassadors, don't believe the tour guides when you go to the campus. Go to the cafeteria, look for the stoner guy like staring, you know, into the middle distance at a bowl of Cheerios, and ask him what their experience is with the university, and that's what you're going to know. And I kind of feel on social the same way, where your potential students have questions about the university. Of course, I'm going to say everything, you know, through the lens of what, you know, the higher ups want me to say. But when the current students chime in, that's where that authenticity comes in. Like, this is the real deal. And I think the same thing with fans of the comic book, you know, talking to new fans, and like it's that they're going to give you the real thing, and that's really powerful if you can harness it.
That's the value of the viral nature of social, is that, you know, you stoke the influencers up, and the brand advocates get them stoked, and they do a lot of that heavy lifting you can't do for you. Right.
Yeah. What was you going to say, John?
I was just saying that, you know, you can cut it down into all these different angles, you know, whether it's current students, future students, whether it's diehard comic book fans, and, you know, the fringe broader audience, whether it's a new client versus, you know, your current clients. The philosophy and the marketing approach, it's, you know, it's universal. That's what we preach all the time. You know, these are just new customers, existing customers, and how to appeal to those. You know, it's not easy to draw those lines, and especially in this type of space, I would imagine, you know, you have those diehard fans who do expect you to stick true to the roots. Then you have other fans who kind of want you to be creative. They want to see something new, but they also want it to be familiar. And then you have the broader society, especially lately, I think, in nerd culture, it's not a niche thing. It's ubiquitous. It's, you know, everybody gets a little excited about the new Marvel movie or the new Star Wars movie. Like, it's a cultural thing at this point. And so, you know, trying not to exclude people, but also trying to please the people who are going to be overly critical is a fine line, especially on social, not just in marketing in general, but especially on Twitter of all platforms.
Right.
Yeah. Well, not to get too far, because I mean, this we kind of went in reverse here. I had the Invincible I had this entire conversation was at the end of the podcast, but you know what? It works like it works. So we do have a segment in the podcast, and you know, it's called Mitch's BrandBit. So we've got something interesting, since, you know, we do like to talk about ads. Mitch, why don't you share with everybody what you found out about Heinz 57?
Okay. It kind of hit the internet yesterday. All the news services picked it up, but apparently If you go to the Heinz Ketchup website, it now takes 57 minutes to load.
On purpose.
On purpose. Okay.
Yeah.
Those of us that are old enough to remember the ad campaign from way back where, they'd had the ketchup bottle tipping over and then you heard Carly Simon's song Anticipation come in and just, highlighting the fact that ketchup, Heinz ketchup is so thick that's why it takes it a long time to come out of the bottle. Well, guess what? Now you go to their website and it takes 57 minutes for their page to load, which is, a caricatured illustration of the thickness of their ketchup. They're being true to their brand roots, which I think is amazing. But if you're willing to test your patience and wait the 57 minutes, you'll have a chance to win a Heinz burger kit, which they're gonna, it's a drawing. You get all the accoutrement you need to have a really successful hamburger barbecue.
That was the kind of part where it felt. I thought the campaign and like the concept was really interesting, and you're going to have people visiting the site. It's brand awareness. You're getting PR out of it. I thought the prize was a little weak for making people sit there.
Yeah, you could make that argument. I think it's like if you're patient enough, you win a burger kit, basically. but on the positive end of it, just as an illustration of their brand message, I thought it was pretty ingenious. But I'm kind of like you, Jonathan. I wish the payoff was a little fuller, a little more satisfying.
Yeah, Jess, what was you going to say? You look like you had like.
Well, it gets people to visit a ketchup website, which who's going to do that? But two, I think it's interesting. It's 57 because like Heinz 57. That's
right,
on brand
exactly.
now. And I'm wondering if this was a bit inspired by remember KFC did the Twitter on their Twitter account, they were following exactly 11 different accounts and it was all the Spice Girls and guys named Herb.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah. And it kind of feels like that sort of same, for lack of a better term, flavor.
Right. They tried.
Right. But really, it's not really that big of an ask, I guess, because you could just have it open in a tab while you're at work and that 57 minutes is going to go by. But
nobody's going to sit there and just, at least I want to meet somebody who's going to sit and stare at that screen for 57 minutes. They're going to go off and do something else. Well, and the other side of this too, and you've alluded to this kind of thing before, Jonathan, it's all over the newswire. It's all over the internet now. It's everywhere. Something like that, you do something like this and, any PR is good PR, as the old adage goes.
Yeah.
Their name is out there.
From a web developer's perspective here, 57 minutes. Okay. Like I read that and I was like, Google Core Web Vitals comes out in May. I'm glad this page isn't made for optimization because it ain't going to make it on the search result page.
Yeah.
And then I was like, wait a minute. Okay, look, I get it. It takes a long time for the ketchup, depending on how you like to pronounce it, to pour out. But, if you tap the label 57 on the bottle, it'll just like come out. It'll just.
You also squeeze these days.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. We don't really have a large budget for sound effects on this show, so I got to go.
You guys are taking all the fun out of this. All your little secrets to getting the ketchup out of the bottle fast. It's just blowing it.
Yeah, if you tap that, but my point is like if you tap that and the ketchup comes out, well, we can do a thing in coding where you can actually click that label. If you have a graphic of it and you click the label and then it just comes out, there's
but that's not the message.
Yeah, but you could have made.
I know 57 minutes. I get it.
And just to close this out, just to let what the burger kit actually comes with. Each burger kit comes with a red spatula, a custom apron, a grill mitt, napkins, plates, and of course, bottles of ketchup, mustard, and relish. Okay. It's kind of it's not, it's not like they just send you a pack of hamburgers and buns and a bottle of ketchup.
Yeah, but it still sounds like I can just go to the Kroger aisle and just kind of pick all that stuff up on the way out.
Yeah, but it's free. And if you win this, it's free. You don't pay anything.
I know, but how expensive are plates? Like plastic plates?
Hey, so don't easy. These are people came up with this idea.
Yeah. A bunch of people sat in a room for hours and hours and hours.
Like us.
with a marker
that's
board.
true. Yeah, that's true. I mean,
It's
okay.
creative. I like it. I think I mean, we're sitting here talking about it on a podcast. That's from a brand efficacy standpoint and marketing. You can't argue with it. And
No.
depending on how many folks go and get their free kit, if nobody sticks around, they got all this free PR, and they don't have to expense any of the free burger kit stuff. So, it's a win.
Yeah. I mean,
Generally, I'd say it is. I'd say it is.
Yeah. But some exciting news before we get further into our main conversation. We actually have a sponsor for this podcast.
Oh,
Yeah. It's shocking. It's shocking, but it happened. It finally happened. It's like we've been doing, I think this is episode 46. So 46 episodes in. Sponsor. So this episode's sponsored by Two Men in a Truck. Yeah. So I'm now the audio version of this podcast. All you guys have already heard the ad because it'll be a radio clip that we were given by them to play. We'll play that at the beginning of the podcast. But for those on YouTube, basically, Two Men in a Truck is the fastest growing franchise moving company in the country and offers comprehensive home and business relocation and packing services. So visit twomeninatruck.com for a quote for your next move. They are the movers who care. There's really cool documentary, I believe, that was on YouTube about the story of their company. It's worth a watch. We'll try to dig out the link and put it in the description of the video on YouTube. But it gives the backstory on how the logo came about, the company, and all that. It's I thought it's a sweet story. So, but yeah, check them out. twomeninatruck.com, and that's our sponsor. See, did I do it right? Did I do that right?
It did.
It was wonderful.
Yeah, it's almost like I know what I'm doing. Yay! All right. Main time. Anatomy. There is and we stole this off of your stuff, man. But the anatomy of a terrible social media post. So wanted to go through some questions because since you're the expert, sir, what makes for a good, or in this case, a terrible social media post, and does it differ across platforms? Wanted to know what your thoughts were.
Okay. I often say there's no one right way to do social media, right? So what makes a good post is a little bit more difficult, but I can definitely tell you what makes a bad one. There's no one right way to do it, but there's a lot of wrong ways to do it. And kind of the post that you're referring to and the blog post is I put together working in higher ed. It's kind of a different beast because in addition to your primary accounts, you have all of these smaller tertiary accounts. So you have the main university page, you have athletics who just does whatever the heck they want because they can, and then you've got the math department, the science department, the art department. They all want to have their own social media accounts and brands within the brand, and everybody's special, and I don't like the school colors, so we're going to be green instead of purple. No, you can't do that. And the levels of people running these social media accounts vary greatly. So you've got a main social media manager who's actually trained and experienced, hopefully, and knows what they're doing running the main primary accounts. But whoever's running the account for the School of Business is either a faculty member, an administrative assistant, a student worker, somebody who's not a marketer. Because anybody can do social media, right? So what the problem that I was running into, and a lot of social media managers in higher ed and government and other areas too, request, hey, I made this flyer for an event or a program. Can you post it on social? And you open the attachment, and it's something that they made to go on the wall. They might have made it in Microsoft Publisher. I'm going to get in trouble for dogging Canva, but they probably made it on Canva.
We've all done it.
And it's just not right for social. And I found myself constantly having to reply, I'm sorry, I can't do this. Here's X, Y, and Z. So instead of individualizing my replies, I just made a blog post detailing everything wrong with all the flyers I was seeing. So the one that you can see, go to my website on my blog, is jsstansel.com, and it's got a terrible Shutterstock image with the watermark left on it. It's
Oh,
got,
beautiful.
you know,
I see that.
yeah,
so
and these are
often.
all everything wrong with this flyer is things I've actually seen and people have requested for me to post on social for the universities I've been working for in the past. So, you know, there's a bit.ly URL written out that you can't click because it's a JPEG, right? And there's, you know, myriad fonts that don't match. There's, you know, things that are pixelated. There's QR codes, which, you know, QR codes have their place, but on a flyer that you're going to post on, and one, you shouldn't be posting flyers anyway. The content should be made for the platform, not, you know, okay, I made something I'm going to stick up on the wall. Let's post that to social too. So it became part of my training curriculum for new social media managers at our university. And I'd point to it and say, okay, let's pick this apart and talk about why this doesn't work. And that little bit of education goes a long way. So when you're talking to, you know, others within your company, or even clients who make requests that, you know, are not in their best interest, I find a little education of saying, hey, this is why we don't do that. And I want you on board with stopping this for me, right?
Yeah.
Empowers them rather than makes you the brand police a little bit, or the marketing police that says, no, you can't do these things. Like, once they understand why, they can kind of join in with you. And I've had, you know, people on campus come up to me and go, oh, hey, JS, I saw this terrible flyer on social media I want to tell you about. So instead of asking me to do that, they're now in on it as far as being spotters for bad content. Sometimes this is that one thing, like when you're in an industry and you see something, you know something about something. I know you guys talked about it not on the podcast before, like not being able to turn off that marketing brain when you're watching commercials or you're seeing promoted posts, right? So training the others that are in those tangential departments to yours to understand that brings them into the fold. So you're working with them rather than against them on a lot of things.
Yeah. John, in our organization, he's our chief marketing officer and our director of accounts. And he's got his hand on that a lot every day. So
yeah, it's explaining brand standards goes a long way. You know, you said the color changes and the font changes. It's like, especially for higher ed, you have so many different departments, units, and within those, there's so much, you know, red tape between the teams and what they're doing, and lack of processes and turnover and all that stuff. And with student workers, higher ed is a beast. We say it all the time. And I didn't last more than a year in higher ed. I was in the marketing department for online programs at a local university. And, you know, not that it was a bad job by any means, but it was just so much, just like constant battling between the different colleges and the different business units and all that just became tiresome, really.
There's a reason why I'm not in it anymore, but I do love higher ed, and it always holds kind of a special place in my heart. But yeah, you're right. There's a lot of you, in order to be successful in higher ed, no matter what department you're in, you don't just have to understand your field. You have to understand the machine of higher ed and how to get things done there. And some of the, you know, it's amazing. Like, and it's not just higher ed, but some of the higher ed, it's like amplified a little bit. Like decisions were made because two faculty members who aren't at the university anymore had a fight in 1979, and that's the reason why your communications and your literature and creative writing departments have split, right? Or are you know, I love this story. The university that I was working at, University of Central Arkansas, the brand colors were chosen in 1909 because two faculty members were put on the color selection committee, and one wore a gray scarf and the other wore a purple sweater that day. And they're like, I like your scarf, I like your sweater, brand colors. Like, you know, that's the way it's been for over 100 years, because
that's how we do our work.
Yeah.
When we're working,
Exactly.
we just pick whatever color shirt they're wearing that day, and that's the brand.
That works.
It's almost like you have to, like in higher ed, you have to learn the systems. There's books out there about systems, and you got to learn that one I think, when you get into that. I mean, it's kind of funny how it resembles like I've been in the ministry side of things with churches. They've got the same kind of thing going on. You know, you got to figure out what that system is if you're going to work. And nonprofit, same thing. And that's just the way it is, unfortunately, because it's a group, and you know they've earned it. I mean, they've been there for years. They've kind of become a family. So, and you're the outsider coming in. So the moment you recognize that, and you're coming in there, and you're going to propose a bunch of changes, you kind of have to learn what you just said. You know, that like, oh no, Betty wore a gray sweater that day, and that's our color. You know, you can't.
I mean, the other thing too is that, I mean, when you're dealing with, like, let's say large layered corporations, and you get these kind of turf battles in between different departments and different areas, it almost sounds like in higher ed, sometimes it's that situation only amplified. You have to juggle personalities and egos and competing interests. It's kind of making that parallel.
I can't remember the exact quote, but I think Henry Kissinger said, like, the reason why higher ed politics are so vicious is because the stakes are so low. Like,
that's interesting.
And I mean that's just the case. It's you get. I think the most vicious battles in higher ed are sometimes fought over the most inconsequential things. Like, you know, I'm trying to think. I mean, there's just
too many.
Yeah.
You're trying to convince people of common sense. You're not gonna, if you're already that's your start. You've lost. You just don't pick that hill to die on, I think is the way I approach it. Because sometimes you walk into something, you're like, and John's this way, you know, it's like the numbers don't lie. You know, you walk in, you start saying like, but this is what you could get out of this, and here's the ROI or whatever you want to say. And sometimes it doesn't matter because the system is what it is, and it's just not going to change. And so you either have to, I guess, you know, say, okay, well, we're just not going to do it that way. Then, you know, we're going to keep puddling along.
Well, I mean, it's like, okay, we probably need to take the employee portal off of the top bar of the homepage, because students don't need it. There's other ways to find it. It's like, well, where is Professor Jones? How's he going to get there? Because every day that's his homepage, and that's how he clicks to get the employee portal.
Yeah.
It's like, well, Professor Jones probably needs to change. So.
Yeah, I did for a year. An industry that, I guess, for, you know, you talk about higher ed. I was in higher ed for about 8 months at a marketing company, and I was like, you know, it was a decent job too. And I was like, I need to change. And I got into that right after I was doing and developing car dealer websites, and then for independent and franchise dealers. And so the franchise dealers, I was like, yeah, cool. You want this? That's fine. Because, you know, if you want to have Ford, Lincoln, Mercury on your sign, you got to do what Ford, Lincoln, Mercury says. So I don't have to sit in that chair and make those arguments like you did, JS, with all that. I would just say, like, if you want a delivery of some Ford vehicles for this year, you can't do that to your website. You're not going to get a starburst that says call now for sale, because they will call you and say, no, you don't get to keep that franchise license with that. But the independent dealers, that was that all the time. They would just call in. If it was raining, I knew I was getting a call for a bunch of change requests and things that were just like inconsequential like that. It's like, you know, your homepage is your website. That's not, people are looking at your inventory. They're not looking at like how many cars are sliding across your homepage.
You know, it's interesting. I mean, one of the things we preach is staying committed to what your brand promise and your brand message is. That's number one. You guard that and you promote that, because that's why people come to you. That's what your customers are looking for. That's what sets you apart from everybody else. Anything that happens under that is secondary. And it's in a large organization, again, with competing interests and competing agendas, it's hard to keep everybody focused on that larger.
Hard to agree on what it is.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, that too.
And
if they haven't determined what that is.
Yeah, if it's changed too. I've seen sometimes, like when you deal with branding, if it's like a change in the logo, website, whatever it is, you know, at the beginning, everybody's really excited about that change because they feel like, ooh, this is exciting. We're going to do this. And then it starts to get to that point, and the deliverables start to show up, and they start to see the creative, and they start to see the actual change materializing. And then all of a sudden, there's probably a couple of people that go, I don't know about this. And they start pulling back. And then you're like, oh, great. Now we got to go back and have that conversation at the beginning. Like, remember y'all, remember we said.
Trying to keep everybody in the boat.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because change is scary. It doesn't matter. Everybody's excited for it, but I don't think the impact, it's easier said than done. Kind of it comes into play at that point. And it's like when you start to really like propose change and what that is and how it can benefit, it still scares people and they start to do that. So that's just human nature. But John wrote a couple questions out and it made me think of something. And so I think it's a really good one is what are your favorite brands on social? So who wants to go first?
Oh man, there's a lot of good brands, and one that I really like. There's Huckberry is this sort of men's outdoor goods brand, but their customer service is just unparalleled. It's top notch. Their content is just looks really good. Like not just from social, like they're one of the few emails that I get and I look forward to checking every day. They're really good. I'm really writing it these days. One being a parent of a 4-year-old. I've uncovered a lot of accounts that I probably wouldn't have seen, but like Nickelodeon and Nick Jr., they are doing some really cool stuff on Instagram right now. Their social media, I believe her name's Bailey Cargill, who works on their socials, been doing some really innovative stuff with their Instagram stories, like finding unique uses for the tools that are allowed there and like kind of subverting them and using them in different ways. And then like Fisher Price, I think is really doing really cool stuff. Like it's just really interesting and they know, that they're marketing to the parents because a 3-year-old's not getting on Instagram and hopefully not, right? Still a little too, I'm not totally against youth getting on social accounts, but 3 is a little young.
Yeah, it's a little early.
A little early.
What's Noah up to, Jonathan?
He's watching YouTube.
But one thing they did like they're kind of playing to the nostalgia of the adults who are looking and doing some innovative things. But they did like a toy museum on Instagram. They set up like the Fisher Price toy museum and like these awesome displays through the decades of various Fisher Price toys. So instantly I went back to the 80s and like, oh, I forgot I even owned half of these toys, like the Fisher Price like tape deck and all that stuff.
Yeah.
So I think those brands right now are kind of what I'm watching. And I'm seeing that's what stops my scroll.
Yeah.
For Nickelodeon in general is kind of trying to break the barriers overall with their NFL sponsorship and all that stuff.
Yeah.
I just kind of caught little bits and pieces of it, but I know some people were horribly pissed off and other people were like, this is awesome. I think you were in the awesome category.
Yeah. I love that. Like what a great way to bring, new people into the fold. Like I'm not a sports person, but like I'll watch if you have Nickelodeon like pouring green slime on the quarterback with AR, like
right.
I'll check it out. Have kind of cool sound effects, like in a great way to bring the youth market into something, or even talking about connecting new and old, right? Maybe you've got a dad who's watching football every weekend and his kids can't relate to it yet, and it's like, oh, we can enjoy this together. So I thought that was incredibly innovative, and I know there were some critics, but that just feels really kind of short-sighted to me. Like, don't get onto our turf. Like, no, let's invite some more people in.
I think
you have to at least give them credit for trying.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think the age too with what they did with the NFL. My memory of Nickelodeon is the slime, and I don't know if it's been around forever, but when I was, I don't know, between 9 and 13, that's when I feel like they started just sliming everybody. Voice awards and all that went into full effect, and I think, and people my age now are having kids. I've got a 2-year-old and a 3-month-old, and now they're trying to kind of connect those people who are maybe watching football with the fact that they're having young kids and getting that exposure to the brand, like you said, kind of bringing that new generation in. But also, we know that nostalgia is one of the strongest emotions, and one of the best marketing tools, especially for that kind of industry with kids' toys and kids' entertainment and things like that. I think
they're action figures. They're not toys.
I'm sorry. Some of them.
I feel seen.
I remember Nickelodeon doing sliming. I don't remember like exactly who. It may have been their own folks, but I remember making and sliming things like my He-Man action figures, and I would have that. That's what I did when I was a kid, because I had it's kind of a tangent. Sorry guys, but it's like I had like Snake Mountain, and then I would take a character and just slime them. And my mom hated that because it's hard to clean up.
You ever try to get that out of shag carpet?
Yeah, we didn't have shag carpet. That's why I was told to play in the basement on the concrete.
Was this last weekend or?
Yeah, it was last week actually. Yeah, it was. It was last week. And anyways, I like Arby's. their Facebook. I mean, I don't know if they're still doing it with the food and everything, but they would make stories and things out of like the condiments, the packaging, just the food, and that's what they would do. So whoever they got who was that artistic person, that's what they did for a long time. And I remember that back in like I think it was 2016 or 17 when they were doing that. And I just thought that was really, really creative. And I've always had like a love for that. I thought that was like, well, that's a great way of like not trying to inundate people with like, there's a coupon. Like, no, it's like you get to see like, oh, look at what they did with the fry box.
Well, there's a social on Twitter, Little Debbie, the snack cake company. They're constantly out there. And not just throwing out promotions. It's things like what you're talking about. It's posing and to me, they're kind of a nostalgia brand for people to a certain degree too. They kind of play on the fun aspect of what they do, and I think that gives them a wider berth as far as what they can experiment with as far as messaging. Not just talking about buy oatmeal pot. A box of oatmeal pies is dirt cheap and you can get them from us. It's like, no, there's a charm aspect. And then you've got the whole Wendy's Twitter account that's always kind of poking fun at all the other guys, and they're not afraid to throw a lighthearted jab at somebody here and there. And that's the kind of stuff I like to see when they step outside of their kind of prefabricated branding zone and make it human, make it real, make it interactive with real people, because that's the value of social media, is to actually have, in Twitter, is to have that in real time conversation with people, and then get that entire viral, again, kind of brush fire going, that it kind of takes a life of its own. That's, to me, that's the value of social, is that how, it becomes real, and you let the audience kind of start carrying the load of getting your message out, rather than you just constantly throwing content out for the sake of throwing out content.
Yeah. Another question John put in here I thought was really cool, and we'll probably use this one to wrap up here a little bit, but what's the nerdiest thing you've ever bought, done, or participated in?
Where do I start?
That's tough. It's like just me getting out of bed in the morning. Right?
This is for everybody too, Mitch. Everybody answers.
I think for me, probably. Ooh, can you come back to me? I want to think of. There's just a lot to choose from. Safe zone.
Yeah, I'm kind of the same way. It's like, here I am in, late middle age. And I'm still, I get excited. I get to go to a comic store and buy one of these. And I feel no shame.
Ultraman comic for our listeners on audio, by the way.
And I feel no shame. I feel no shame I raised my two daughters as soon as they were old enough to sit up in front of the television, watching this stuff. It's like like Jay said, it's like getting out of bed every day. It's so ingrained in my life now that I don't even think about it. You know, I've never cosplayed or anything like that. I'm not that into that, but I admire the people that put the time and the effort and the energy into creating these amazing costumes that look like they were done in a Hollywood studio.
Oh yeah, I knew somebody that did cosplay, and it's not cheap to do. I mean, some of the outfits,
not to do it right,
she'd pay a lot of money. She did a Poison Ivy outfit that cost her like a couple $100 easily just to get the tights part right. She did the Poison Ivy from Bruce Timm, who was the artist on the Batman animated series?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So she did that one, is what she did. And you know, it was a fantastic looking outfit, the boots, the whole thing, but it wasn't cheap. Yeah, but cosplay is not something I've done either. I've not done LARPing. I've actually seen people do that though here in down at the waterfront park. I was like down there one time, and I saw a creative director at another agency a couple summers ago, and we were talking, and then we look over and saw these people running around in foam armor, just going at each other. And it took me a minute to realize what was happening because I'd never seen it in person, you know. So I've not done that, but I guess the most recent thing that I probably bought that's nerdy is, Walmart bought all the molds and the packaging sets and everything for Transformers back when they were sold in the 80s, you know, and so they started like stocking the shelves. And so they started putting out like the Transformers, like, as you remember, Optimus Prime and Bumblebee and all these other characters. And so, yeah, 40-something-year-old man going through Target through the aisle, and I'm just loading up toys in my arm and walking to the register, you know, not even taking time to get a shopping cart because I knew that these were going to disappear. And, you know, and I got me a Soundwave. I never got a Starscream. I was upset about that. And apparently they did release Devastator and all of them, like in the big box and everything, like it was sold when I was a kid, when I was like 10 years old. And, you know, if you try to go on eBay now to get any of that stuff, you're paying hundreds and hundreds of dollars for them. But I snagged me an Optimus Prime without the trailer, which I don't even remember them selling him that way when I was a kid. I remember he had
my little brother had it.
Yeah. But I got that. I got a hot rod from the movie, you know. If any of you have ever seen the Transformers animated movie, there was a anniversary release in 2005 that came out. I've got the DVD for that. So I got the hot rod who later became Rodimus Prime. Now I'm getting really nerdy. Now I'm deep.
He's deep into the lore now.
Yeah, I know Transformer lore pretty darn well. That's my other one, is that, besides Batman. But yeah, that's what I did. So yeah, Walmart, and it was not 2 a.m. when I did this. It was like middle of the day.
Middle of the day.
No shame.
Okay, so I've got mine because 2 a.m. is a good segue to mine. When the Last Jedi came out, you know, I was working in social and I was worried, like, okay, I want to see this movie. I don't want any spoilers, and spoilers are just par for the course. It's like an occupational hazard. You work in social, no matter what you do, you've got to be on social all the time. So you're going to see a spoiler at some point. So I wanted to get tickets for opening weekend, and like everything was sold out except for a 6:30 a.m. showing at the Alamo Draft House in Austin, which was about an hour outside where we lived. And my wife, to her credit, was like, let's go. And she woke up with me because she's amazing. And, you know, we went at like, we had to leave. I woke up at like 4 to like get ready and go and get there. Because if you've ever been to the Alamo Draft House in Texas, it's amazing. And like the pre-show beforehand, they do all of the, instead of like showing like Coca-Cola presents blah blah blah, they have like a 30-minute presentation of like, here are the things that inspired the movie. Here's like a clip from a spoof of Star Wars in Mexico or something like that. It's these really cool things. And of course they have like themed menus for all this. So we had, I guess a Star Wars themed breakfast at the time. And to Alamo Draft House's credit too, like you would think the people that work there would be like, oh, these nerds here at 6:30 in the morning. Why do we have to be here? They were like, come on in, it's time to watch a movie, guys. They're film nerds. Yeah, man. It was a really, that's probably the top nerdiest thing I've done. I think we do have some photos. My wife was nice enough to humor me and take, because they had like the whole setup, like in the lobby of like, they had the backdrop and stuff like that. So yeah, it was a lot.
That's cool.
That was.
I've got a similar story. I've got a similar story. When everybody finishes up, I'll recount mine in that regard.
Well,
you sure?
John's the only one that's not.
I'd say on a regular basis, staying up at like Friday at midnight or something, looking through Google Analytics is my nerd. I'm like trying to piece together, what the hell happened the week before on an e-commerce website. I'm not as much into the comic book side of things and superheroes and all that, but give me a Google Analytics account at 2 a.m. on a Saturday and I'll figure out something. I'll build a dashboard or something.
Yeah.
It's not what you're nerdy about. It's how you love it.
Yeah. It's not what you love. It's how you love it. That's a Will Wheaton quote that I love. It's kind of one of the basis of how we define a nerd anyways in our organization. But another thing is John's a big fan of movies that are like based to have a true story attached to them.
Mm-hmm.
And so I know one, John, that I'll tell you about here on the show is go watch, Batman and Bill. And I believe that's on Amazon Prime. And it's a good documentary. And it's about Bill Finger, who created Batman. Sorry, Bob Kane. That was a big thing that came out. So when Batman versus Superman came out, they finally gave him credit in the opening credits, Batman created by Bill Finger and Bob Kane. And that, I think it was and that's important. It wasn't that there was like words and things like that. Like the documentary talks about like this guy tracking down Bill Finger's like distant relative. Like he had to really look for somebody who could come into the case and claim it, who actually was Bill Finger's like great grandkid or something like that. It's crazy, but it's a great documentary to watch that journey and to watch the story and how it unfolded. It's definitely worth a watch on that. I'm kind of getting a sense nobody here has seen this or heard of it.
I know. I've heard of it. I've heard of it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I guess that gave me like 2 nerd things right there that I did.
Get an extra cookie this week.
It kind of parallel with JS's story about going to see Star Wars. I never got to go to Alamo Drafthouse, doggone it. I'd love it. I wish they had one here. But when the first Batman film came out, the Michael Keaton, which is still my favorite, by the way, Michael Keaton version. It paralleled with my birthday, and my wife took me to the first showing on the first day it premiered here in Louisville. We were we wanted to be the first people in line, but we were the second behind the creative director for another agency and 3 members of the baseball team that he coached. Actually something else magical happened. Actually it got me another gig, another agency gig by him being there, because we got introduced and everything, and our love for Batman kind of. But anyway, being there, second in line, the first Batman movie on my birthday, and my wife, this was her gift to me, was to take me, because she's not a nerd. She puts up with my nerd, but she's not a nerd. But it was kind of interesting because it's kind of similar to JS's story. But it wasn't 6 o'clock in the morning. We got there at like 9. And we're still the second people.
I have never been that type to like get up and do what you guys did to go like stand in line for a movie.
I love it.
I would go on Sundays because for me, that's like my church. So Sunday morning, I'd get up and I'd look for what's coming out. And I did this for like, obviously 10 years, with Marvel releasing all their movies, right? I would get up and I would look at like, okay, what's coming out? And that's the Marvel movie I would go see at like 11 o'clock on a Sunday morning. And, I don't know. I know that's kind of maybe weird. I have no idea.
I'm not the type to do that, but also like there are certain franchises where it's like, I just really don't want spoilers. And it's like, Star Wars is one of them. Like I don't want spoilers for that. And like I've been bitten too many times on social media that like, nope, I'm not gonna let it happen. Like I'm turning my phone off. I'm going at 6:30 in the morning. Like
So what was your reaction to the very last episode of The Mandalorian?
Oh snap.
What was it for you that when was it when the X-Wing flew in, when it made its appearance, when did you like go like, holy crap, that's him?
There was a bit of a spoiler because I knew like through the day. I wasn't able to watch it till like the end of the day, and that's like everybody's like stay to the end. I'm like, oh, okay, kind of bracing myself for something, but like just I guess we can give the spoilers now. Like spoiler alert, like when you see that green lightsaber, like I felt like I was 5 years old again. Like it
was the
pulls
belt
everything
buckle.
out. Like I had to I watching it in the evening, and my wife's currently studying for her CPA and just studying all the time. I felt terrible because I was so excited. I had to run. I'm like, babe, Luke Skywalker was on The Mandalorian at the very end. He had his green lightsaber, and and she's like, oh, that's nice.
That's nice, dear.
I called my mom.
I
admit it. I don't care. Judge me. I don't care. Leave it in the comments below, as they say. But yeah, I was like, and it was Mark Hamill, except he kind of looked like from the video game. I hope they go back and clean up what they did.
That uncanny valley. It's close enough, but it's not quite right.
So. Not quite close enough.
But yeah,
it's interesting because I've said since The Mandalorian premiered, it's the first Star Wars property that's been launched for me since the original 3 that gave me that feeling again that the original 3 that even came close to giving me that same feeling the original 3 did. And I give the credit all
movies. What did we get? We got like Rogue One, you got the episodes, Han Solo, and like that show in the last, what was it, 10 minutes is all that was. That whole thing was like 10 minutes maybe. They gave us in the last 4 or 5 years that we wanted in 10 minutes because they gave it to Kevin Feige. They gave it to Kevin Feige and what's his face?
No, give it to Jon Favreau.
Yeah, Jon Favreau. But I mean, Feige's involved in this thing now. And it's like that 10 minutes they gave us what we were wanting in the last 5 years in 10 minutes. I mean, because later on they were like cigars.
They get it from a production standpoint. They understand the mystique. And I'm not sure everybody before them.
We had R2D2. Wasn't R2D2 in there? Like we were so enamored by Luke Skywalker, like R2D2 came out from behind him. And that kind of like for me too, I was like, oh, it's R2. Yeah, for those watching this right now, if you missed the part, if you're like, the last couple podcasts, you guys talked about networking and all this, but totally went off the rails with the nerd on this episode.
But to some degree, it's an example of what, solid marketing that is attached to the larger brand promise and fulfills that brand promise, what it does for you. I mean, that's
This show's probably the first show since, because when we started podcast, with another friend of mine, we started podcast in 2016, did it for a couple of years, and this is actually kind of how it went. We took a nerd kind of idea thing and some sort of marketing branding piece, and we put it together to kind of illustrate like how the big boys unfold, these things to show the small, like, because I mean, social media is accessible to anybody. It's just how you do it to do it well, which is why we touched into like how not to do things like with JS and his posts. Because, it's like, just look at what they're doing. You've got almost kind of a template. Everybody's got different resources, I know, with costs and stuff, but still that drip of, that building of excitement, for an event or for something, it's powerful. And social media is that engine for that. It really is, or that vehicle. So that's pretty much that's all the questions. That's all the entertainment pieces. And we kind of went a little long on this one, but that's why they call it editing.
So JS, tell us where, when, and how we can see Invincible.
Okay.
Or stuff that you want to promote with your own stuff.
I can do both. Invincible premieres on March 26th on Amazon Prime. Streaming. Wake up and stream as early as you can, right? The first 3 episodes will go up that day, and then it'll be weekly every Friday after that. You can find me on Twitter. I'm pretty active at JS Stansel. I'm just on all the socials. I co-host a podcast called Thought Feeder. You can get that. We talk about marketing and digital marketing in particular, but cover higher ed and all sorts of topics. You can get that wherever you get your podcast, and you can visit my website, jsstansel.com.
All right, there you go. Yeah, same for us. We are at nerdbrandagency.com. You can go to nerdbrandagency.com/podcast and watch this episode with JS and us geek out about Ultraman and Star Wars and all kinds of stuff and social media and everything. You can find us on YouTube. We don't have a thanks, Mitch. Always giving us that Ultraman character in the camera.
So much.
Yeah. You can also find us. We are on anchor.fm/nerdbrand. If you want to really just kind of do that, that's fine. We're on iTunes, Google Play, all the nice places to subscribe to, even Spotify, which bought anchor.fm. So, yeah, Spotify is growing. I kind of think Spotify is going to become like YouTube's competitor one day at some point with the video they're adding on and everything. So it's going to be interesting. But yeah, you can check us all out. We're at NerdBrand Agency everywhere too on socials. So yeah, definitely watch this video on YouTube, like, subscribe, help us get that vanity URL because we're vain. We're so vain. But thank you, JS, for being on the show. We appreciate you.
Great to have you
on. It was a great conversation, man.
Excellent. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. All right. Well, everybody, thank you for listening. Tune in next time. And remember, keep your nerd brand strong.